about you guys? I hope you guys are having a good one. Today we're going to be discussing plant propagation, propagation equipment and tools, and also soil media. And we're going to get into all of that today with some hands-on later on. So what is plant propagation? Just to give you guys an introduction of it, plant propagation is the process of increasing the numbers of plant species or preserving the vigor of a plant. So what does that exactly mean? It's creating, new plants from the original one. If that's asexually, if that's sexually meaning seed, asexually, and that's the vegetative end of it. So whatever that might be, we're trying to get more species or preserving that specific plant. Okay, successful plant propagation, that involves the knowledge of technical skills, and that's exactly that's why you're taking this class, to get that knowledge of technical skills for plant propagation. Really learning that art of plant propagation, and I truly believe it's that combination of lecture and hands-on, so you're going to be getting both. The second, knowledge of plant biology. Plant biology, we're going to be doing more over that, especially like the seed biology and whatnot. We're going to get into that on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. But that's the morphology, anatomy, and physiology of the plant itself. And the knowledge of plant species and selecting a method of the correct method that plant species prefers. So we talked about going in DIR and the USDA Woody manual and really looking for a specific species and then look at what the recommendations are. And they got the recommendations by, guess what? By doing research themselves, really seeing it firsthand. So that's how they selected that, and that's how they created those recommendations. So going to the source and figuring out what exactly works, from the literature, and then doing it yourself. In the past, oaks have a tendency not to root that well, with cuttings. And I really wanted to preserve, it was John Davy. John Davy is the founder of Davy Tree. And it was the white oak that was growing right by his grave, like right next to it. The stone was actually like kind of emerging into the tree itself, and I wanted to propagate that, so I did acorns, and obviously acorns are the easiest way to do propagation, so that's sexual means of propagation for the white oak. But I also wanted to take cuttings just to see, if whatever happens, even though the literature told me not to, and how it would be unsuccessful. So I did that, and I had about 20 cuttings, and I did like different growth mediums or growth hormones, and I tried different like soil mixes and everything. Turns out they did not root. So, but they might have. But they definitely didn't for me. But that's not to say that if you wanted to experiment with something, you should, just to see it firsthand. So the two different types of plant propagation, we discussed this a couple of times in class already, but sexual propagation versus asexual propagation. Sexual propagation is the recombination of genetic materials to form uniquely genetic individuals, or that is seed. So sexual propagation is just like all of you. You have bits and pieces of both of your parents in your genetics. From asexual propagation, it's pretty much like a clone, like an exact clone of yourself. So maybe taking off a limb and then propagating it from there, because I know that's becoming more popular now. But yeah, that's that asexual means. So that's taking a piece, let's say a stem, a certain cutting, a leaf, maybe from a succulent, you just get like part of the cacti, stuff like that. But you use vegetative organs to create plantlets that are genetically identical to the parent plant. So we're going to be going over all of this, and you guys are going to get experience in doing all of these things, but dividing, cuttings, budding, grafting, and then microcrop. So careers in plant propagation and history of propagation. This will be discussed later in the semester. We're probably going to discuss this. I might put this in on whenever I'm going to be away on leave for that week. So I might do this for the online session. So stay tuned for the careers and propagation and history of propagation, just because, like I said, I want to utilize the good weather. I want to do as much things hands-on with you. So this will be continued. So now we're going to get into propagation equipment, exactly what you're going to need for plant propagation. A lot of the stuff that you're going to find it at home if you're a gardener right now anyways. But there are some stuff that you're going to go out and have to buy. Pretty inexpensive for the most part, especially if you want to be doing the basic plant propagation. If you want to end up doing this as a career, you're obviously going to want to get a more higher end equipment. But for the most part, this is what you're going to need these next like 10 slides. But safety supplies, that's mainly, I mean, in my opinion, that's most important. So we do have, I brought in my first aid kit just in case. So if anyone gets hurt, we're good. But you wanted to have the first aid kit, which includes like the bandages and antibiotic ointment and gauze pads and different adhesive wraps and scissors. You also want to have like a protective face mask and plastic goggles and waterproof gloves if anything does happen. So we always want to have safety first. You guys are going to be, I'm going to be giving you guys sharp objects. So obviously you just need to be cautious of what you're doing and understand the risks of it. So please be safe. You don't want anything to happen, especially in class, but always be safe, of course. Hand tools. So the hand tools are, you'll pretty much rely on like pruners and knives to take cuttings, but you are gonna want to have like certain knives for grafting. So that's just something to think about. So your typical garden knife, and this could be absolutely anything. I brought in one to show you guys. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but this is going to be anything that you use. It should be sharp to just do miscellaneous things like in your garden, around the house, outside, whatever it may be. And then like with all of this stuff, I'm also going to have hands-on, so we'll pass around some different supplies as we do this. And for the people that are listening online, I'm going to have all of this stuff for you guys. I'll keep it in a box. So you guys can actually look at everything and I can explain what exactly it is, and you can get an idea from there. The budding knife, here's the budding knife. Okay, so the budding knife, as you can tell by the name, it's for doing budding, and it has a curved edge with a blunt end for opening the bark and actually inserting the bud. So it makes the process of budding very easily. It actually has a curved edge also, where you actually hold the knife to. So it makes it easier for whenever you're, whenever you're taking out the bud and trying to scrape it off the stem and put it into, inserting the new bud to like the new plant material. It makes it a lot easier to take the bud out originally because of where it is in the handle, that little groove in the handle. The grafting knife is used in grafting, and with this grafting knife, as you can't really see in person, but if you're actually touching this grafting knife, don't do this, but it's very sharp. And it's very sharp and it's very flat, so we can have a fresh, very straight and easily cut stem, which is very nice. You know, when you're out in the field and you're going to be doing grafting a lot if you're doing this for a living. And I mean, it's very intensive, so you want something very sharp. You don't want something dull, but you also want something to have that clean cut, and that's what the grafting knife does. And then snippers are used for pretty much anything. You know, if you have to cut anything, maybe if you want to cut like a certain leaf, like a leaflet, you can use snippers. We always, need scissors doing anything in propagation just because we have twine sometimes that we're using parafilm, all of that stuff. So you're going to need a handy, very sharp pair of scissors or snippers. Okay, now we have dibbles, and dibbles are used for two purposes, at least in plant propagation. Dibbles can be used for actually making the hole for the seed itself, either if that's in the soil media or if that is outside in a planting bed. But you could use the dibble to make that, insert for the seed itself, and then you put the seed in. Dibbles are also used for cuttings, so you could use the dibble and usually with like growth hormones. And we're going to get into growth hormones probably in about 2 weeks. But with the growth hormones, you don't want to put the cuttings directly into the growth hormone just because it might not be effective and it might not be covering the whole entire area that is needed for the cutting. So what you want to do in a growth hormone is pretty much like a powder. So what you do is you get the dibble, and you make an actual dibble hole within the growth media, and you want to measure the dibble hole, and you want it to make it the same exact size as the cutting that you're inserting into the growth media. I'm sorry, growth hormone. So yeah, there's two different purposes for the dibble. This is used mostly for transplanting. If you wanted to move up a pot size or anything like that, you can get this and get the plants out with the full root system. You can use this for various things. It could be used as like a dibble again, more for a dibble for transplanting again, not necessarily for the seed itself because it's way too big for the seed. But you can also use this to alleviate any compaction or the soil crust that may appear on the top of the soil. So you may use this to kind of loosen up the soil a little bit, not disrupting the root system or anything like that though. Very similar to the last one, but this is for more delicate plants. You can use this for succulents, maybe if you wanted to transplant those. And you can pretty much, there's an area right here where you see that triangle, half triangle. So pretty much what you do is you put that right in between the plant, like right underneath the crown, and you try to adjust the soil a little bit, try to loosen the soil and get the root systems, and then you want to lift from that point, and hopefully the whole entire root system goes with it. If not, I always suggest getting the whole entire root ball. That is definitely preferred, but if you're going, say you're putting it into a smaller planter for some reason, just because maybe you want to market it, and those smaller succulents are very popular, and you want to get into a smaller container, you can definitely use this. Sharpening equipment, you definitely need this just to keep everything very sharp. We don't want anything dull. So you want to be sharpening your equipment right before you use it, just so you don't run into, say your equipment is dull and you don't make the appropriate cut, and that may lead to why your plant didn't root itself. So just something to think about, but definitely keep your equipment sharp and clean. Bypass pruners, you're going to be using this a lot with different cuttings whenever we get the cuttings from woody plant material. Different shrubs, tree species, anything like that. We're going to be using bypass pruners. The spading fork is mainly used for division, and we're going to be getting into division 2 weeks from now, and we're going to stay in division for about a week and a half. So we're going to talk about division a lot. We're going to be using the spading fork a ton. We have a lot of perennials in the back that was just donated, so we're definitely going to be utilizing that. So the spading fork, it really just separates the root system, so it separates it into 2 or 3 or how many other different parts that you want it to be separated in. And this is really nice because unlike a regular shovel, this doesn't, there's like separation. So instead of cutting those root systems completely and maybe destroying part of the root systems, we're only cutting it by a fourth of it now. And then we can kind of rip it apart pretty easily from there and delicately. So we don't disturb the root system. At least we can lower disturbance as much as possible. And compared to the spade itself, like I said, the spading fork at least has its separation. With the spade, there's no separation, so we're definitely going to be damaging the root system more. Not to say that the spade is a bad tool, because it definitely isn't. But we can also use the spade for other things. We can use it for digging. We can use it for if we wanted to separate the actual bulbs. And with separating the bulbs, you do need to make a complete cut. So that might be a good way to utilize the spade. So we already kind of went over maintenance of the tools, with us definitely keeping all the tools very sharp and even. You have to keep the edges very even, especially with the spade, before every use. And then another thing with sanitation, please wipe down all the equipment with a disinfectant, just because there are so many diseases and viruses and bacteria and all of that good stuff, more terrible things that can formulate within this stuff. And if you're using it on different tools, you're using tools from different plant species, you are just spreading that. And we want to keep diseases as low as possible. So please disinfect every single equipment, especially, I like to disinfect it like maybe every minute that you're using it, even if you're using it on the same plant species. If you're making cuttings to every single one of those, I still like to dip it in a disinfectant just to make sure I'm doing my end of not passing diseases along. So another one is labels. We actually have a label maker here. So we don't need to actually write it out. We might write it out at some point, but you are going to have labels in here, just because we want to make sure you know the name, the first and last name of the person that can do this, the plant species, and then this is propagated, so the date on there with the year. Now we have grafting tape, and grafting tape is used for grafting and has this adhesive that keeps all of the water out. And in a way, it does not cause any diseases or insects to penetrate it either. So we use this a lot in grafting. Now we have budding tape that is very similar, but you can see with budding tape it's a lot thinner. A lot of times with budding tape, you don't really have to remove it because it falls right off after a week or two. But with grafting tape, you definitely have to remove that because it's a thicker adhesive. Grafting wax. Grafting wax is used to actually go on the graft itself, and this pretty much just deters any diseases or insects, and it's almost like a waterproof again, just like the grafting tape does, but this is the wax form. So think about this as like a Neosporin almost, and then the grafting tape as a bandage. Flats, we're going to be utilizing flats a lot in this class, and flats can range in color. It's mostly black, but we can have different cells, and that the cells, I think is in the next slide, cell trays, and you can see that individual plantlets that we can utilize. But whenever we're going to be starting seeds at first, we're going to be actually putting them into this flat, and when your seeds germinate, we will transplant it. So if you are starting with seeds or anything like that, we are going to utilize these flats first. If you start with cuttings, we're going to either utilize these cell trays, or we're actually going to create our own units. We might utilize the large and small sieves just to make sure we have the correct soil media. I'm not going to be getting into the soil media recipes and whatnot, but I thought this was an important one to put in here. You guys know the importance of different soil aggregates and the different sizes, micropores and macropores from soil class, so I'm not going to preach on that. But you are going to want to see, what exactly is in your soil mix, and to make sure you have the correct amount of porosity and then water retention in there. And then here are different pots that we might utilize. Like I said, for the cuttings, we might utilize pots like this, and then put a plastic bag over it just so we can keep in all of the water, and we don't let in different diseases and insects. So now I'm going to touch base on hormones a little bit. I just wanted to let you guys know we usually call hormones as a way to initiate roots. And what we actually do with this is, you see the powder in the bottom right corner, and with this powder, you're going to put, whenever you make a cutting, you're going to put the powder in there, and it's going to be in the base of it. And then from that point, you're going to put it you're going to put the rooting hormone with the cutting into the soil itself. And from that point, hopefully it initiates more roots to occur. And so hopefully we'll get more roots out of that. Maybe your substrates. Okay. So just to go over artificial light really quick, artificial light is needed in a greenhouse to grow more seedlings or rooted cuttings. You can have things germinate without light. You guys probably experienced that with like beans and whatnot. But you can choose from fluorescent tubes or specialized grow lights too. So it just depends on what your want is, but you can get away with just normal fluorescent lights. You don't need the specialized grow lights unless you want to be doing it commercially. So heating mats, and we are going to utilize this. We're going to need this especially when it gets colder because it's definitely occurring, but many seeds require warm soils to germinate. And then you're also going to want this whenever we have warm soils, we get regeneration. So if it's November out and our soils are say below 40 degrees, that means we're not getting any regeneration. Do you guys remember what soil temperature means for the best root development to occur? So it's 50 degrees to 82 degrees. So that's preferred. But if we go any above 82 degrees, then it's burning. So that doesn't lead to anything good. So we really want to keep it between 60 degrees. That would be preferred. But that's why we use these seedling heating mats. Even under cuttings, grafting, whatever you're doing, it will be good because it's going to make the plant more resilient because it's creating more roots. So different propagation units, we're going to be utilizing plastic bags and electronic chambers. The electronic chambers are new to me, so we're going to test it with each other. But even plastic bags, especially for cuttings, we only need cups and then plastic bags to go right at the back. So we're going to be doing that, especially when it comes to cuttings, but for the seedlings and stuff. We're just going to be using flats. This coming week we're going to be using flats, and then we're going to be using a plastic cover to go over the flats. Cold frames, we have a cold frame right outside the greenhouse. Right outside the classroom. Outside, whenever you're walking through the parking lot, so you guys probably pass this all the time. But with this, it's very useful for overwintering different cuttings. Or expose seeds up to the periods of cold weather that may stimulate their germination in spring. Or you can start these seedlings and try to germinate seedlings for fall and spring also. And in the greenhouse, we are so fortunate to have a really nice greenhouse attached to our lab and then outside as well. So we are going to utilize this as much as possible, and we can utilize it for the feed, which is nice. Not just in the warm months, but we're also going to be propagating, hopefully, all those propagation plants that we start now, they're going to continue growing throughout the course. Now let's touch on different soil mixes. And soil mixes are so very important. I know I was talking to some of you guys on Tuesday, and you explained, the importance of soil, and you were focusing on the soil is dependent on the whole entire community and the plant health, and I completely agree with that. More than anything. So really you need to focus more on the soil mixes and really be cautious of what you're putting into the soil mix and do your research first so you can make this successful, your plant propagation is successful. So your soil mix will depend on the plant species. Like I said, you can go in the dirt or the USDA manual that I have on my desk, and you can look through it to find your exact plant species and what soil mix and what soil mix recipe that covers. So some species germinate best in soil with less mixes, soil-less mixes, or many types of cuttings require soil environments to grow, so you might not want to put in topsoil or soil from outside or anything else. So we don't want to put in any soil from outside just because it's not sterilized. We want to make sure a lot of the stuff we're going to be doing is less media, which is perfectly fine. But we definitely want to make sure everything is very sterile at all times. And then some seeds need nutrients quickly, resulting in a nutrient-rich mix, maybe a mix that is the large component is maybe peat moss. So before we get into the media substrate, I just wanted to go over some quick definitions. I know a couple of you did not take soil, so I want to make sure that we're on the same page, that you're not confused with anything. So cation exchange capacity, CEC, is the capacity to hold positively charged nutrient ions or cations such as calcium, potassium, and magnesium. Inert material is material without cation exchange capacity or the ability to contribute nutrients to the medium, and that has no pH whatsoever. It has a pH of neutral, and it doesn't have anything to contribute to pH. Macronutrients is the NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And these forms are available to plants, and these can also include calcium, magnesium, sulfur in this group. And then pH is a measure of mediums, acidity, and alkalinity on a scale from 1 to 14, where 7 is neutral. Numbers lower than 7 is usually acid, and then numbers above 7 indicate alkalinity. And it's not necessarily alkalinity, it's high soil pH. A lot of people say alkalinity, and it's not. You can have high pH without an alkaline soil, but with alkaline soils, it's high pH. So it's not necessarily alkalinity, it's just a high pH. So a soil-less mix is a mix made from materials such as perlite, vermiculite, sand, and peat moss, which we will discuss in a couple slides. And a sterile mix is a soil mix from an inert substance or materials that have been sterilized. These mixes do not remain sterile for long, but offer some protection nonetheless. So soil mix ingredients, coarse sand. And you can see this. We use coarse sand, washed sand to radically increase drainage, as those macropores, aeration in the mix. It is most useful mixes for rooting cacti and other desert plants if anyone is interested in that. So you can incorporate sand. The coarse sand for is actually coconut husks, coconut hulls, and dried coconut hulls, and it's a good substitute for medium. And then compost is made from decomposed organic matter, and this material has high CEC, contributes to balanced macro and micronutrients, contains so many beneficial microorganisms that help protect plants against diseases. But then again, this needs to be sterilized. I kind of stay away from using compost just because I want my materials to be as sterile as possible, because that's when diseases come in, and like diseases and different insects come in overwinter, and nutrient-rich soil like that. So I try to stay away from compost, but I'm definitely not deterring you guys from this. So if you guys wanted to use compost, you definitely can. Do I recommend it? Not necessarily if we're going in the greenhouse. Outside is another story after you start your plants. Peat moss is finding peat moss and germinating mixes. And the medium is sterile for a lot of things that you need for rooting cuttings. Perlite is made from expanded volcanic rock, and then perlite holds a lot of water in its cavities, but it is also inert, and it sheds water easily. So you can look at this as like a very coarse sand, but it has no pH, it doesn't contribute any nutrients or anything like that. So it can add aeration and drainage to your mix. Now, vermiculite, on the other end, is made from expanded mica, and it's a form of clay, and this material has a lot of magnesium and has high CEC, and it aids in drainage and aeration too. So this is a really good one also to use in your mix if needed for like high nutrients and CEC. So here's some soil that is typical for like the soil mixes and recipes. But you still want to look for specific recommendations depending on the plant species in either one of the, like the binder, the USDA binder, or the DUR. Nutrient-rich mixes: 2 parts compost, 1 part topsoil, 1 part sand, 1 part vermiculite, and 1 part perlite. Soilless mixes, 1 part perlite, 1 part vermiculite, and 2 parts finely milled peat moss. And then lastly, the sterile mix is 1 part finely milled peat moss or core, a coconut core, and then 1 part perlite. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture. If you guys have any questions, I know this is for the people that missed class or want to review this again, please just feel free to ask me any questions, email me, whatever it may be, and then we'll go from there. All right, thank you.